we are animals. I love talking about this subject, like how humans are animals. And when I watch and observe people, I'm just like, oh, we're just like animals, but with little outfits, and we try hard, and we are very animalistic, and we have our survival brain activated all the time, oftentimes, and we think that we're in control, but we're not, because we've got a very animal part of ourselves. Within ourselves at all times. So I want us to remember we are animals. And I, I love this video. It's like this monkey throwing shit, and then you see that it's like splattered all over this lady's face. And I thought it was hilarious. Have you guys ever been to the zoo and had a monkey throw poo on you? I have. And it was like the the basis of this presentation. I was like, I want to make everything brown like poop, and just remind ourselves that we are animalistic, just like this monkey. Comparing ourselves to other people is so natural. It is the most natural thing we do as humans, as human animals. And we compete with each other just like chimps do. I like to think about ourselves and compare ourselves to chimps because humans and chimps share 98.8% of our DNA. We are very similar in a lot of ways, and we can learn a lot about ourselves by observing other chimps. There is a lot of there's a few ways that we get status in a community. And in the chimp community, one of the major ways, of course, is through dominance, knocking other people down. And this is pretty common, as we can imagine, in the caveman days. Who is bigger, most dominant, and they will be able to have a better chance at mating. And when we think about where we're at nowadays, we're like, okay, the kinds of men and the kinds of men that we see on social media or on dating sites, right? Bigger, buffer. They still have that need to be more dominant. That's one of the ways to move up in social status and to mate. Another reason that we are, another way that we move up is through prestige, being popular. And we think about the chimps, they do grooming. They're grooming each other all day, picking at each other, cleaning each other for health purposes, but also really for social status. Who you groom matters. In the Chimp Empire documentary, my husband got so sad because he saw this chimp go up to one of the leaders of the group and try to groom him. And that guy denied him and just walked away. And then that chimp just falls to the side, all sad. And my husband, Will, was like, I understand exactly how that chimp feels, right? When we're rejected, we're denied. So, early Homo sapiens, actually, one of the ways that they got prestige is through creativity. And it is thought that our capacities for design, visual art, music, storytelling, humor, creativity were actually evolved as bigger mating displays. So because we were like, oh, we want to be the most prestigious and popular guy in the tribe, let me try this art. Do you like this? So we can actually thank competition for letting us, I think we're all designers. I'm no longer anymore, but for allowing creativity and bringing creativity into the world as humans. And it allowed our brains to grow bigger because of this. So thank you, competition. And of course, we think about, nowadays, popularity. Celebrities are really popular, sexiest man alive, etc., right? Still doing the same things. And the reason we had to compete was because there's not enough to go around. If we think about, if you watched any documentary, like nature documentary, you'll see that they are fighting for that carcass, right? It's hard. It's harsh conditions. And the thing about it is, for one person or one group to succeed, another has to fail. If in the chimp empire territory, it's called chimp empire because they're fighting for territory, because they want territory with a lot of fruit and whatnot, right? So there's a lot of competition there, because if one group gets it, they get to feed and the other doesn't. So we need to compete. We need it to survive. But do we need to compete to survive anymore? Not so much, right? As modern day humans. I want us to just share right now and think about who do we compete with? What are in our modern day, in your life, Who do you compete with? We think about all the areas in our life that we're comparing ourselves. Friend groups, maybe family. Another family member got this job or got a house, right? Oh, comparison. Ooh. We feel it perhaps in the whole industry, right? Not just in our companies, but maybe the whole industry as a whole. UX design. Then maybe it's on a grander scale, social media, right? And really it comes down to, we're kind of competing with the whole world. And when we think about those primates and our early Homo sapiens, we were in groups of 20 to 30, right? So it was kind of easy to know where we are in the social status, and it was easy to know who we're comparing against. But now we have unlimited supply of the world to compete with. It is never ending how much we can feel like we need to who we can compare ourselves to. There will always be more and more and more people who've got it better than we do, that are more popular than we do. And so that part of our brain, that animal part of our brain that needs to compete for resources, is activated all the time. It's unnatural for us to be competing with the whole world. It's more natural, perhaps, in a chimp environment, right? 20 people, like, okay, I can mess with that. But if we think about the whole world, what does that do for our nervous system? So there are two parts of the brain. There's like the learning part of the brain and the survival part of the brain. And the learning part of the brain is the one that can like handle information, new information with ease. It's open-minded, it's calm. Then there's the survival part of the brain. And the survival part of the brain is usually mentally and emotionally overwhelmed. And it makes it really hard to process new ideas. It makes it hard to forgive ourselves. It makes us take things too seriously. Right? So oftentimes the survival part of our brain will trump the learning part of our brain because it wants us to survive. It's like, oh no, we need to get our resources. You're going to die. So that can lead to chronic stress for us to kind of always have that survival part of our brain activated, that competitive comparison part of our brain activated. And so the ways that we can start to compete with that, or to sort of help with that, is rest, joy, calming the nervous system, addressing our stress sources. And most of all, what I want you to get out of this part of the talk today is I want you to feel so much compassion for the animal in you, because you are an animal. And the part of our brain that has kept us alive, that has competed with others in order for us to get here today, right? All of our ancestry that has allowed you to live on this earth today is through competition. So we need to feel like when we compare ourselves, when we judge other people, when we feel that, no, oh, that's just my animal part of me. Can I give myself a lot of compassion for that? When we feel down on ourselves by looking at other people, oh yeah, that's the animal. And it's not going to go away. You'll always be an animal. So we do have to make sure we care for the animal as best we can. We live in a very fucking imperfect society that pressures us to be perfect. I want us to just allow that to sink in. It's so imperfect, the society that we live in this world. And what it is pressuring us all to do is be perfect in it. How can that be? How can that even be possible? So what do we think is the most dominant force in the world? America. America's a dominant country and force in this world. And everyone in many countries are trying to live up to this American dream. Right? Our culture has permeated and has made other countries feel like we have movies and our music. And it's like, and a lot of immigrants, people have come to America to live the American dream. My mother, my grandmother, right? And what do we think of? What fits the American dream? What's part of the American dream? What do we think of? Like, who is the American dream? When we think about what that person is, what's the American dream?
Perfect job, lots of money. Good looking. Perfect house, white picket fence.
What about as a woman? I think of American Dream like a skinny lady in that white. I just like have a vision of a white picket fence lady, blonde, thin, white. Right? This is our ideals of what it means to be perfect. So when we think about this is my beautiful drawing. This is our society. And then these arrows are the pressure to be this American dream. And whether we're conscientious of it or not, there is this pressure. Then I got like real artistic with this shit. I was like, okay. And this is the imperfect society surrounding all of it. Capitalism, right? Buying a lot of shit. White supremacy, thinking being white is perfect. Patriarchy, colonization. And this topic was really hard for me. I had to pause yesterday because I was going down, like, what am I going to talk about today? And I had to pause because I was like, what the fuck am I really trying to say here? Because I was starting to feel so uncomfortable. Like, how do I make this a fun summer camp, but talk about these intense topics? And what made me really uncomfortable is I don't know much about these intense topics, but all of my research around the history of perfection all was leading in the same place. All was leading to this. And I was like, I'm fucking ignorant. I don't really know much about it. How am I supposed to talk about this? How am I supposed to share how people should, what to do with all that intensity? And I was reading a lot of books from Indigenous people and about racism and about capitalism and all of these different things. And I was feeling so uncomfortable, like how I'm feeling uncomfortable reading this and hearing this. And how am I going to share this to other people? Especially when we're just like having a fun time, right? With presentations. So I'm going to do the best I can with what happened with me yesterday, because what I went down was this little rabbit hole. I read this book, started reading, not all of it, called Decolonizing Wealth, about Indigenous people. Oh, where do I start? Okay, yeah. And I went down this rabbit hole of understanding what's happening and what happened with Indigenous people. And something I really loved about what he said was like, if we can't identify it, we can't interrupt it. So I was like, okay, what does that mean for me? I don't experience racism. I don't think I've experienced sexism. I don't think I've had that experience much. And then I started to question myself, like, wait, have I? I always thought I was like, this girl's like, oh, I'm like a go-getter in life. Like, I'm gonna start my business. And like, none of those things have affected me in my life, really. And I started to ask myself these questions yesterday. Who's been the owners and managers for companies I've worked for? I started to look back at all of the companies I've worked for, and I realized they were all older white men. 90%. And I was thinking about one of the companies, the last corporate company I worked for, and honestly, the first in some ways, was these three guys who were in a frat together. They were a younger white guys. They treated the whole company like a frat house. They were like lifting up other people that were similar to them. I felt so uncomfortable in that place. I felt like I didn't belong, but I didn't like equate it to, oh, this is like because they're white and men. Like I didn't equate it to that. I was like, oh, I'm just uncomfortable here. And I left that place and I stopped working for anyone after that. I quit. I was like, I'm going to start working for myself. I'm not going back to that. I was so pained by it. But it's so funny because as I reflect back to that story nowadays, like the way I've been thinking about it was like, oh, I'm just such a go-getter. I wanted to start a business. That's the way I was thinking about myself. But the actuality, that's a part of it's true. But but what I was realizing after doing this exercise was like, no, I was just so pained from this experience that it forced me to do something different. I was like, I can't do this shit. And I was like, oh, that's more of the reality. That's what I needed to identify that I wasn't identifying before. I thought about my mom's experience as an immigrant. She always told me like, oh, I can't get a good job because I don't have English. Like, I don't speak great English. And I was like, that's just a mentality, mom. Like, come on. And then I was really thinking about her experiences and things she's told me. And she's like, oh, when I would go with your dad to work company meetings, they would never look at me when they would speak. They would only look at your dad. I think about her being a teacher's assistant with special needs and how she was always an assistant to a white woman. How is she supposed to think that she could move up if she doesn't see it in the world? If so many experiences are telling her that she is a second-rate citizen and she can't do the things that everyone else can. She was like, you have to do it because you can speak English, Elise. You can do it. You be the dream. And I started to look at her differently and her experience differently yesterday. And I felt the pain of it. Like, why was I being ignorant to her and just being, well, just have a positive attitude. Finally, I was thinking, why did I even start this business with presentations? And I'm like, because I want everyone to love themselves and be perfect, right? That's a part of it. Love their imperfections. But the other part was like, I was so tired of hearing other people that didn't sound like me. I get tired of hearing TED Talks from people who sound so perfect. I literally like cringe, like my stomach hurts. I'm like, bleh. So that's why I created it, right? So I'm identifying, and that's why yesterday I had a fucking awakening. I was like, oh my God, I am affected. I am affected by this. And I needed to identify it. So the final part we're talking about here is perfection isn't real. And I know this because I was thinking, well, what are the white men in my life, right? If we think about picture perfect, right? Okay, who are the white men in my life? They're supposed to have it easy, right? They're supposed to be perfect, and that's life is going to be easier for them in some ways, yes. But think about my dad. And my dad married my mom and had 2 kids, worked at Universal Studios. He was trying to live the white picket American dream life. And he ended up, he was actually, he's gay, and he hid that for so long. So being gay was not being part of perfect, right? So he had to hide that for 30 something years. And then he came out to my mom. He had HIV because he was fooling around with other people and hiding that. And he was trying to move up in Universal Studios. And it was not happening. He wasn't able to become this manager that he wanted to be, right? Move up, make more money, be the boss, have your own business, right? This mentality. And he wasn't able to do it. He started drinking a lot more and drinking a lot. He was an alcoholic, but he started to really go down the deep end. And now he's homeless. This is a picture of him about a year ago. He prefers this life. That's the crazy thing. And I think, what makes someone choose to be homeless? Like, he prefers to be homeless and do crystal meth every day. And I think good for him sometimes. He's out of the fucking matrix. He's out of this perfectionist pressure system. And this is such a driving force for me. It's always been a driving force for me for the last 5 years of working on my mental health, and trying to make sure that I love myself and all of these things. But I didn't realize how much this pressure, just the pressure to be American dream, and for him not to have any of the answers of how to get out. So I want to talk a little bit about how do we heal, right? Because there's a lot of heaviness. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so much heaviness, and I see everyone around me affected in my life, right? From the person who is the ideal to myself, that living up to this perfectionism is so hurtful to my mind, body, and spirit. So how do we heal? And the number one thing is radical self-love. And part of it is understanding I am an animal that is competitive, that I have these thoughts. It's not me. And if we think, oh, I'm judgmental to myself or I'm judgmental to others, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm not good, right? We need to do the opposite of that and understand I'm just an animal and these are normal, natural things that my society that is imperfect is putting pressure on me to be. But I'm just an animal. Right. Of course, we have higher consciousness and the ability to think beyond it, which we're going to talk about and think about and use. But we really have to always know that the animal is with us and we have to feel compassion for it. The other thing is, I understand my current animal kingdom is setting me up to not feel good, right? To live this American dream and how we are all affected by it, not just me, but all of us in this room and everyone around us is affected by it, whether we're conscious of it or not. And we need to start asking ourselves, how am I a part of this? How is this affecting me? And starting to make the invisible more visible. I'm going to start to radically love every part of me exactly as I am, right? That's radical. Oh shit. Oh my God. Like this part of me, I'm so boring. I'm going to love the shit out of it. I'm going to love every imperfection and I'm going to practice being imperfect. This is how we can start to fight against. This is our resistance to this pressure is going so hard on this because the pressure is so intense. We have to go even more intense with the radical self-love. We must heal ourselves by each taking responsibility for our part in creating or maintaining the colonial virus. He considers the colonial virus dividing, controlling, and exploiting. And he wants us to embrace a new paradigm of connecting, relating, and belonging. This is like, I was reading a lot about Indigenous culture and it made me feel like more inspired to continue my education around it because they believe that you start your life being self-actualized, that you're already the most wise, powerful being, and you live your whole life just finding and discovering more of that. And I loved that. And the second part is community actualization, relying on the community, that we're not doing all of this shit alone in our life, that we are in a community and we are getting healed with the community together, right? So that's why I think like his mindset too is around connection, relatability, belonging, a lot of the things we lost because of colonization. So that's why part two is asking ourselves, what is my part in creating, maintaining the ideals around division, perfection, control, or exploitation? I was actually thinking about this myself. I was like, how am I perpetuating this? How am I perpetuating this? And I realized yesterday, like, oh my gosh, I am a hypocrite. Like I was telling people, this was my web page for my one-on-one coaching before, like level up your career with speaking confidence. And I was like, that is complete marketing messaging garbage that I don't believe in at all. I don't believe in it at all. I don't believe that people need to level up their career. Actually, the way I'm living my life is in complete opposition of that. I'm telling my husband to downgrade his career right now. I want him to make 60 to 70% less than he was making in his previous job. He doesn't have a job right now, but I was like, don't go for it. And I'm not telling him to do it, but I believe in this. And we've been discussing it for him to make a lot less so he can relax his nervous system and his mind, and for us to live more and more simply. I work with clients that are trying to level up so much, and I've been hearing their hurt of like feeling like their nervous system and they're anxious every day. I'm like, don't try to level up. Don't try to get a job right now. If you can afford it, heal. That's the messaging I'm giving people. So why am I marketing myself like this? Like, and talking about myself like, oh, I move up in my career so quickly. I am doing the opposite of what I'm asking other people to do in the way I'm living my life now. Right. So I've changed it yesterday quickly. I was like, oh, let me just change anything besides that for now. I don't know what it is, but I was just like, okay, live a purposeful life with speaking confidence. And it's a holistic program for your overall well-being, right? And I was like, I don't even know what it is. I just opened up Pandora's box and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's not going to be that anymore. I realize I'm part of something and oh my gosh, yesterday my husband was so sad. He's like, he was starting a business and he's seen so many marketing messages. Maybe you guys have seen them where it's like, make a $10,000 a month in 3 months, starting your own business. And he had listened to so much of that. He thought he was going to start a business and he was going to make it. And he's completely not. He's failing. And he's like, I'm a failure. I'm a failure. I'm a failure. And he feels so down on himself. And he feeling like he's so mopey. He couldn't sleep at night. And he just left in like a hurry this morning. And my heart hurt so bad for him. Because he's not living up to the American dream, the ideal of having a business and these marketing messages that are like, be bigger, be better, do it all fast. And I was like, am I doing that too? Right. So seeing how I'm a part of this. And then we've talked a lot about this, which is healing in community, having honest conversations just like this. Something else I do is I follow people who are radically promoting imperfection. And I eliminate and remove people who talk about building a business in 3 months. Like, I don't follow any of that shit. I follow everyone who's in the complete opposite. So really looking at the messaging inside my social media and kind of going all the way to the other side of the spectrum. I love this girl. She like flashes her pubes all day in videos and whatnot. She's like, I don't care, pubic hair all day. And I love it. I'm like, yes, yes. Like imperfection. These kinds of things. I've done a lot of body work too for myself. And I look at imperfect, non-American dream bodies, flaunting it with love. And it makes me feel so much love in my heart and in my body. All right. So we need to not just eliminate, but actually include more and more and more of the opposite. It's something I was always like, oh, I'm so independent, because I was like the child that had to take care of my parents and start my own career and all this stuff. And I thought I was so independent. And there was a question from the book that was like, look around you. Look at the computer that was made in front of you, or the coffee cup, and how all of these things have been designed by people, how these things have been created and built by people. Your whole entire universe and your world is because of community. And we forget that. We think we're independent, doing it all on our own. It's like, no. When I think about the things I'm sharing with you today is not my own. I just read a bunch of stuff and put it through the funnel of my own experience and have learned a lot from other people, like even these people here, right? It's all through other people that I am here today, and that I have any sort of understanding of what to share today is because of community. I want us to think about potentially some things you don't love about yourself as a speaker. We talked about what we like, and it was hard to find. And I want us to think about what we don't like and how we could look at them differently from this new lens. How might the things that we don't like about ourselves actually maybe represent our culture, our background, our lifestyle? How is it potentially an interesting quirk that you share with a family member? How is maybe accepting this honoring your ancestry, your background, your culture? How is this paving the way for future people who are just like you? How does embracing, and this is again, we're talking about radical love, right? Embracing this allow for a new paradigm of connection, relation, belonging versus divide and control? How can we just overall bring loving and radical acceptance to these qualities? And then I want you to think about a new story that will empower you and the way that you do desire to show up in the world. Instead of us being reactionary and a lot of our goals and dreams being just actually part of the American dream pressure cooker, it's not our own. How could we really think about this question, and who do we want to be in this world? How would your communication change from this new narrative? What would you gain if you showed up in this new way, with this new way of seeing yourself, of who you want to be and how you want to show up? What would you gain? And also, what would you lose? Sometimes there's a lot of things we need to lose that's really hard. For me, me talking less about leveling yourself and growing in your career and moving fast, I lose a lot of marketing. Like a lot of marketing material tells me that I need to talk a lot about that. And that means because it's so easy for people's ears to hear it and be like psyched about it and like, yeah, I want to move up in the world and level up, and I feel so down about where I'm at. And so it speaks to those people. And that's a majority of how people are used to hearing marketing messaging. So I stand to lose a certain audience, a majority of audience that are used to hearing that kind of messaging. But what would I gain? Maybe like clientele that really is going to absorb and connect with what I'm sharing. Maybe feeling like really good in my work every day, even better, even more fulfilled in who I am, right? So these are the questions you want to ask yourself.